Hello, America and humanity and Iran. In this world, in other words, even the people that use the name Scott Ritter. I don't know how he calls tells he Trump a coward if he doesn't go into war. He's using the military has collusions with CBS. They have fake conversations with me about the World Trade Center attack, interstates, New England. Please have them fix that and have that guy. And they forced a principal child abuser at the same time. That was proven anyway. I caught them doing worse with that first, but they're changing and faking what's recorded. They have retired Weathersfield police chiefs and a bunch of police forms and police that are tied to them involved and their intimate ties. How are you? So hyper peace is possible. People, we heard this phrase. People say, "Oh, we must learn from history." If we learn from history, people speak about peace or and non-peace. They leave the sides out, like they're leaving the breaching method out, but they're using passions and emotions anyway. Someone brings it up, like we have black people's right to life. How come no one ever used passions and emotions about that? They have a racket with the people involved with the name Riley. I don't know if he's related to Miss Riley, but they have the more. They have all kinds of like say they have all natures of crimes encountering bodies, and they're allowed to get away with crimes. But they use that truth for a lie, and they are in the collusion too. You guys change and fake. Not you guys like the government does. Judge Napolitano too. There are proofs that they're changing and faking and hiding what's typed to judges. CBS completely faked conversations and ties to me and to others. They put little kids and adults to fake ties to doctors that never were. They attached me to fake ties to doctors as a kid and as an adult while they were doing their stories. They have a bunch of people involved with Hartford Hospital, involved with CBS, with Hartford Hospital's Institute of Living. They have more natures of organized crimes with them and a whole bunch of people involved with them, with sexual and medical offenders of kids, people that are working with the elderly at the same time. It's not by accident. This is multi-front. We haven't had these countries are collusions here and there because they have suits and ties, counters, exceptions. You guys bring up Hitler's name. How come you don't bring up black people's rights of eyes with that? In other words, how come everything has to be separated? In other words, that's the problem. They don't care about countering each other. They have collusions. It's even recorded on Facebook. FBI Director Robert Luskin and other agencies worse than criminal incompetence with speaking about hate, and the judges, because all sides of criminal and civil cases and both sides in crime scenes, next to the crime scenes, relative body dumping spots in the World Trade Center attack and the news at the same time, and the differences of guilt of intelligence at news are next to them. It is manifest because this breaching method used all location slash s as a collusion slash s, and then America's founders were born. For example, even with slavery, they have our founders framed for slavery. James Madison explained how and why they wanted nothing to do with it, and and why they didn't even have free speech. Everyone was sensed, not just by the internationally monitored conversations. Even if you want to go against slavery, you have to speak up about it against it in the internationally monitored conversations. If you were speaking up against things outside of that, you were sentenced. And if you weren't, if someone was speaking up about it and you didn't sense them, you were hurt too. There was a torture method before computers capable of keeping us used remotely from abroad because it came from before modern religious messengers were born. There are proofs that a forced trick persuaded the names of the people, the sciences, more and more not to be able to use their words right, but to pretend other. And right where and how. Nature itself was is showing humanity. There's a breaching method. There's another name involved with countries A through Z. And for example, the reason negotiations are porous is because reasons that the experts supposed to use their expertise to say, look, there's there's technology and everyone still suits and ties counters speaking about war and courage. And how can they be speaking about courage? We have the internet to force equality of fact checking nature. You think science spoke for New York City? I've been asking every day. Every year they're recorded, used remotely, leading up to the World Trade Center attack. In that context and since, all these countries where they were and how they share the campuses use that directions to hide those lies, to hide those things. How you do that? Use it for what you don't have. Subby Bajero, I never saw him next to Central Connecticut State University in my life. He's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with judges, prosecutors, with a whole bunch of people next to that place. Involved also with and they framed me for breaking a window next to a high school when I was a kid. And the kids can confirm that I did. In other words, I went like that and I threw it on the ground because someone handed it to me to frame me. Increasingly, people involved that I caught further, like a Phil Colol, is involved with people who've been framing me since I was a little kid, put me fake ties to him, fake nature ties to him, fake exception too. Increasingly, as one's involved more further with the principal upskirt nature, involved also with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, their family members, and their neighbors, involved with all kinds of judges and prosecutors, with his cousins, and multiple falsified police reports. Wethersfield police faked conversations with me as a kid, and now as an adult. These people jump into people's conversations dishonestly. They don't care about courage, nothing like that. And they want to use their knowledge of good and evil. The names of the people of sciences, A through Z, their difference. Courage is about speaking about that, how showing they're all guilty at the same time and being used remotely. That's one of the things that Black people's whites of eyes is capable of showing us, especially once you have discerned what James Madison detailed about the breaching method, about why and how, his plan, and the plural founders behind it. They didn't even have the security to let us know their names. We're supposed to understand that. Instead, we have our plural founders pretending the ones that were the drafters, but know how they had to leave slavery entrenched. How are you going to leave slavery entrenched and draft the Constitution, leaving out the breaching method that was Rose? That's the only excuse. Instead, they frame them as the founders, and they frame them for slavery. And they have them sense and sensibility, sensing for the breaching method and reacting for it if anyone brings it up. Black people's whites of eyes should have long ago bent and broke the principles of the logic that we've only allowed to hear spoken regarding American history, what we should learn through history, the difference between war, peace, and people using words like diplomacy because it's the opposite of peace. Nature is showing us that we are A through Z. Force, trick, hurt, and persuade. Only allowed to be entertained systems individually, grouped, and humanity voicings, all through an entertained tactical ulterior from nature's and its conjunction to our short words. Therefore, we're forbid, let alone the protraction. New Britain Superior Court has a bunch of people that faked things into databases when I was a kid and I was an adult. It was also because they were covering the lie progressions intercities through time and intra. And these are all kinds of roles in military and stuff like that. Bunch of people. It's easy for people. You guys jump in our conversations and change and fake what we say. Phishing. When we speak about World Trade Center attack, predicate acts. And in other words, it's way worse than fake news. You guys change and fake what people say. Oh, bring it to the court then. The court's caught with you guys. All sides of criminal and civil cases, foreign and domestic though, but per worse. The same names. Since they were kids, they were influenced by recorded criminally foreign influence uses of the databases at campuses and building upon it. Next to, there's a Valley Crest Street in Wethersfield, Connecticut, involved with the John DeMorrow and a whole bunch of people tied to his brothers. I only say time ever in my life with a Paul DeMorrow over the phone. And he said that his brother's a cop. In other words, his brother has roles with I recorded them with various natures, distinct natures of organized crimes with databases. I never had a class with him. They tried to make a fake exception with Mr. Neville. I never had a personal conversation with him. He has rules repeating that he has and demonstrating. He has rules along the Route 3 in Connecticut with people interstates and intrastates where and how we could observe the agencies have been used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, raw. There's a writing forensics involved with remote uses of the sense and sensibilities of Judge Napolitano, as roles with these other foreign and domestic military too, changing and faking digital evidences with the principal child abuser, and with their roles with all kinds of drugs and medicines, crimes, and relative delusions, with psychiatry too, right through world wars. You got a bunch of fakes right there. And they have conjunction slash S to location slash S, intercities and intra-cities in the town lines. People involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and method slash S where they affect confessions from strangers. If you respond to it, it makes it look like you talk to them. In other words, with multiple police departments at the same time with the Wethersfield police, the fake conversations with me and me being there at the police station as a kid and as an adult, and it wasn't anywhere else either. Conversations that weren't at all. These are people that do this on a mass scale. There are proofs that it's interstate because these same names too, how they're involved with a whole bunch of other countries and cultures and games with like a Riley family, repeated sexual things about and Jewish themed with a Mike Domain too. And there are more people with the name Domain involved with like CBS and the place next to it with the policing of it. With people I don't even know. They know my name. I don't know them. I only know Reno Mazzucato. I don't know his name too. I never saw him on a campus I took classes at. In other words, they try to make he has roles with he's reportedly married to the daughter of a police chief, Cintron, who's involved with falsified police reports, identity theft, fraud, slanders, organized crimes with kids, including medical and sexual offenders of kids, and the branches of government individually grouped and together. And then further hyper additionally with the state judicial branch offices in conjunctions to it and to that. Eric Oliveri sought me out as a stranger. He has roles with Trinity College. Also with other people from my area, recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirm. Eric Oliveri and others with Trinity for college, involved with some untimely deaths there. And years before it, then through the years, next to Trinity College, next to Central Connecticut State University. That's in Hartford and New Britain, with the same people involved with federal evidences, crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders in suburbs, timed and building upon that, as the ones building upon predicate acts with their databases and their roles with mayors. Bunch of pretending passions and emotions online, like a Joe Aiello, which was time collusion slash less. There were with a former mayor Gold, a bunch of people tied to a former mayor Gold, involved all along Route 175 in conjunctions to it and to that, and involved with a Joe Aiello, who people tied to him are involved with as sexual and medical offenders of kids. And a John DeMora. Joe DeMora says John DeMora, he's one of the ones rolls with it. These are houses and businesses next to Hartford Hospital through time too. John Miles sought me out to make confessions about that too. And then he switched what he said. A whole bunch of they have roles with the whole investigators. Every age and nature of their family used remotely, criminally, foreign influence, tactically, delusions, raw, at the same time with the kids and adults of other countries, of other religious spots. The difference of guilt, names there next to it, same way. Time collisions, that difference was exploited at or next to the networks. CBS faked conversations with me. These are wire crime acts and methods. These are people, the whole bunch of ties to a Claudia Scalora and a guy and her boyfriends have roles with malls and shopping centers, and Elm Street in Rocky Hill. Also with Eric Oliveri planting evidences with databases at campuses and people with the state judicial branch offices in the corners of streets of Elm Street and Rocky Hill and in Wethersfield, and their confessions about UPS. Also with a Bobby and others involved with Bobby with the name female, but they are ones with the name male too, involved with the confessions regarding UPS. One of her boyfriends said he got arrested for selling drugs through UPS. Now these are people increasingly with the state judicial branch offices and sexual and medical offenders of kids involved with other natures of organized crimes with them, and identity theft, fraud, slanders, and federal evidences crimes. And Eric Oliveri is involved with that part of it. I'm not saying and repeating fake things. These are also interbranch faking transcripts and people. In other words, he's also one of the ones at Trinity College involved with the families that are involved, planting evidences with the untimely death intercities on my street, and further with the police that forced her, like they arrested one of the people, but they're using arrest to keep people's mouths shut. And how they do that too is and motivated to it like a Kyle Gills involved with a knife pulled on me, but by a friend of mine, a girl. But that's because the guy pulled the knife out first, and he was scaring her. People want to go, and they want to go talk normal. Increasingly, New Britain Superior Court and various natures of court, the district court, Harvard courts, before and after the World Trade Center attack. After the World Trade Center attack, they had to hide life regressions from their roles long term, short term before it, from Connecticut, collusions interstates with Washington, D.C., and with Mike Pandoff is also by one of my educators, confirmed. He's recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, also with his son, involved with people on all sides of criminal and civil cases. And Central Connecticut State University has roles with some foreign the medical families and military involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids. Bunch of fake punks want to use words like courage, use words like cowards. You guys have been cowards since founding with black pupils, whites of eyes. All right, get them on paper, one name in sequence, please. Judge Napolitano do follow mandated law. They're refusing to identify themselves into branch because they've been sticking fake things there. As collusion/S with databases at each campuses I went to. They know this is hyper evidentially recorded, and they've been shown that it's discernible and to hide other. I shouldn't even have to let them know it's coming. So please get them on because they switch names too. When you're there at courts, they by now they should have known they have an extent of collusion, the differences of guilt. You guys have all sides. In other words, the police are certainly a certain type of victim. The same way the people are. And they say, oh, criminal. They have roles with whole predicate acts methods they can't afford, but to have self-value collusion/S with every nature of crime scene and having been. And then further, collusion/S with the torture, extortion, slavery method, with the prisons. Increasingly, Connecticut's corrections offices and judicial branch offices also had and has people from Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Italy, Germany, Korea, South Korea, etc. All collusion/S with the ones involved with the World Trade Center predicate acts, with the news too, even with their peaceful stories you wouldn't realize. They're using it criminally for and they're being used to sense too. And then they're also used to pretend it's personal when we bring it up. They attach me. I was supposed to pretend. In other words, there's a whole bunch more that you guys are not letting discern. There were timed uses and collusions I had with body dumping spots. Sandy Hook, there are predators tied to people with the name Lanza and Sandy Hook campuses that are also have also been collusion slash S with a whole bunch of tactically juxtaposed, distinct natures of organized crime. So identities of jobs and of titles that can't afford to have discern principles by black people's why, for example, there's a witch trials place. What's next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. Then and now, those places across the country, the founding locations, they have other communicated that for our founders and James Madison left to be communicated. They use the words of people's that and pretend they don't realize it was a breaching method, sensing everyone, layers of people sensing. Overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, international companies. You, in other words, even slavery, right? Laws against all women, laws against native, changing what nature communicates with black pupils, whites of eyes. All lies. I'm not even a lawyer. Lawyers too, all sides of criminal and civil cases in the interest in the foreign. At the same time, they are showing they need to hide life aggressions. At the same time, even when they're not in the cases, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, vaccines to teach us things. It shows us soul /s. So we can make hyper positives, evolution's fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere. There needs to negotiate by countries A through Z that nature is forcing. But right where it's forcing it, names A through Z have a whole bunch of people as locations, areas, and states that value directions needs to lie, or to use truths for lies, or to use truths to screen lies. All rise. This breaching method keeps criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, whole arrays of differences. On this side, that side. Where's the breaching method? It's not that it's not there. In other words, you guys inside, inherent to, active to, and progressive to the nature of the debate is a quality unabridged that you guys are forbidding its voice. The names of each of the people, the scientists, the experts, they are offensively showing that they can't afford to discern exceptions in exception nature the way nature uses it, because everyone's been valuing fake exceptions. You guys have the audacity to keep repeating about things about religions, but you can't even afford to have discern. In other words, about you're either for it or against. All sides bunch of fakes together. They're little scams with it. Then they pretend you're racist if you don't respond. They plant that too. They lock people that can, the family members of all, they can't go back and afford to have discern because they're making confessions too. Same one's tied to the principal child abuser. A bunch of people at once. And then pretend this person, he's saying everyone's evil. I had nothing to do with it ever. They're pretending other with the news. The news is sources too. WTNH has an O'Neill family. So I don't know them at all. They said they have their kids. They're bringing in their kids as educators and their kids as family members to fake motivations. They're leaking roles with people from Saudi Arabia too, including my Saudi ex, involved with Wethersfield Police with them, with falsified police report they forced their conclusions with, and people named Scalora. Wethersfield Police recorded people named Scalora and a Frankie Reese involved with them with federal evidence of his crimes and predicate acts, and them switching and forging names and fake ties to me. I never had a word of conversation in my life with that older police brother, Mendez. Reportedly, and Eric Mendez is his brother. Never had a class with Eric Mendez in my life. Never saw him around campus. They try to make one quick exception on outside and one quick exception on inside, so they pretend I don't remember. As people involved increasingly with the state judicial branch offices used remotely. But additionally, forgiveness is necessary because To discern the breaching method, we have to discern the guilt of them or work criminal enterprises, private ones, international countries, people using words diplomacy and war who have collusion slash S, even though they don't want it. Or with it's an opposite. Nature uses opposites to show us what is true always, constantly and increasingly, as value itself, nature self. Nature self comes with its complete identity relationship to itself, and its relativity to a special difference here, as with Earth, or it forces that a special difference from here, as forced space nature transfer. Nature being identity's value. Itself is making more of itself through us, through temporary slash lasting space nature, not just us. But if we could all ignore its system, even we all agree to ignore nature's system, it will force negative value nature progressions acts in nature's and demonstration of it. You guys don't think by now there are nuclear problems. The reason people need energy is because of a breaching method that was about a torture, extortion, slavery method that James Madison described. It's not debatable. You guys have it debatable because you have the people attacking the names of the people of the sciences and the other people of the sciences as collusion. The force which were true always, not to surface. In other words. So there's also there's a whole bunch of people with foreign and domestic military. I'm not going to give all the names yet. Mark Violet sought me out on my street. He's one of the ones with people involved with child abuse that sought me out. People in my area and with intelligence families and religious spots. He also has in a corner of a street that went near where he used to live. Someone involved with one of the religious spots along Route 3. Route 3. And so, and two, I do not know I never had a word of conversation with Eric Olson or Matt Olson. I never saw them around campuses. They tried to make a fake exception at my when I was in 8th grade one time. I don't know. Real quick. Increasingly, because that's one of the things too. New Britain Superior Court has an Eric Mendez and his older brother, distinctly but also non-distinctly involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, directly and indirectly. And they faked conversations with me at the police station when I was a kid with a bunch of people tied to them. Kevin Dillon. And a bunch of people at Harper Hospital also have a Kevin Dillon involved with patients and criminals and their doctors and their family members and judges at the same time, collusion slash S, and with the news. All kinds of identity theft, fraud, slanders, and tactically juxtaposed, tactically distinct natures of organized crimes. These are these countries here together, readings of statutes and precedents, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought by people. Fear to let them hide and plot. They're not wanting peace or war, legitimately. They want to be able to pretend they can speak for humanity, for nature. They are fake. They only realize criminal and seditious nature. Guys were child abuse, though. Forgiveness is because all those time collusion slash S get me off the fake conversations and transcripts with the interbranch and with the news at the same time to begin with. Because that was his recorded time collusion with other natures of criminally foreign influence bodies and World Trade Center attack, time collusion slash S with them. How it was motivated is also relative to their roles, with names next to relative religious spots and with differences. That's why my algebra teacher repeated sexual things. And Mike Domain is also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He has people with the name Mulcahy and others all along route. I never had a conversation with him, never saw him on a campus in my life. On Hangdog Land, in conjunctions to it and to that, like Route 3 in the state judicial branch offices. But he was right next to my teacher who repeated sexual things about a girl that lived near me and her being religion. I never even met her in my life. Never saw her anywhere. but that was is increasingly brought up with and involved with it. And so we need to get them on paper. They're refusing to identify themselves legitimately as a branch. Here, to hide and plot. And then they want another words. They have worse than war crimes involved. I was next to the World Trade Center attack that morning, too, and the night before it. And I was an observer in the Ninth Circuit Court. And that court had a sequence shift from inside the affected. That was proven. And names on both sides of that case. Lawyers tied to them. They also had the court and all them. They had their identities stolen. They just changed it fake what everyone says, which actually recorded. The news did and does that also. As collusion /S with remote uses of all ages and natures of investigators, and of crime scenes. The way the breaching method uses them. Everything it does, it did and does through others, even if it's no longer here. To an extent, it's here, it's still a body as nature. We have natures of industries that our founders and nature itself demonstrates to us. While there are not enough jobs, there are natures of industries that are collusion /S against ourselves. In other words, forgiveness is because we could all blame our countries A through Z, the hyperforeign at the same time. We have to pay attention to why and how people need energy because the suburbs were designed tactically to nature, let alone the cities. That's what's making war. That's what's making people with the same old about God. In other words, God is about nature. There are proofs that it's more probable that pantheism is the science of nature. And ism, they would have taught, including its own ism, pantheism, is to see, not to discern if you're in ism. In other words, you're not being led by the hyper invisible, but still discernible, as nature is. Nature itself, its identity shows us, is the smallest finite detail left out when we have black people's whites of eyes left out from telling some American history. It is. Is the breaching method left out? Yes, because the breaching method is what reassigned black people's whites of eyes communications and made everyone sense for it with all exceptions. An exception nature used tactical terror from nature, how they use a whole bunch of peace or war. Peace or war. But there's no breaching method involved. Get down. I'll gather around, vaccines. I teach those things.